Welcome to our first episode of Lifts Gone Wrong. Experiencing problems after you had your lift installed? Follow along as we show you problems we find and the fixes we do for them. We can find and fix the problems you are having.
This will be one of our first episodes of Lifts Gone Wrong, with some of the different things that we're seeing with lifts that haven't been done correctly, and customers are bringing them in for drivability issues. And one of the first things that we noticed with this particular lift was actually these sway bar end links were hitting the springs. The springs have started to sag. This was a Ready Lift brand lift, and the springs have sagged. Also, because it's a 3-inch lift and nothing was done to recenter the axle, the axle's pulled to the driver's side, so the axle's not centered any longer. But you can clearly see how the spring has sagged and was actually hitting the sway bar end link. The springs were also not in the pockets. We did rotate the springs so it would be in the pocket, but it didn't fix the situation where the springs would actually hit the sway bar end link. So some of the stuff that we're going to do to correct this is we're actually going to upgrade this to a rough country lift and go to a 2.5-inch lift and fix some of these issues with putting in all the proper components. And you can see even on this side how bad the spring is sagging and isn't straight. And this is what is causing a lot of the issues with this particular lift. Now we're going to show you some of the issues going on in the back of this particular Jeep. And one of the things that you notice here is they actually did put a track bar relocation bracket, but it actually is either the wrong relocation bracket or something, because the track bar is perfectly flat, and it really shouldn't be perfectly flat at this situation. The other issue is, if you notice, the sway bar end links, somebody's got wrong sway bar end links on this as well. They actually hit the axle, and it's causing binding and a lot of issues here. So just another thing. And the other thing I want to point out here on this spring, it's hard to see it in the video. Let me back up, maybe you can see it a little bit better. But how the spring kind of has an angle to it. If you look at a rough country 3.5-inch lift, one of the things that they'll do is right here at the bottom of the spring, they actually provide a spacer. I think it's a 10-degree spacer to correct the angle of the spring on the axle. And then if you come over on this side, you'll notice too how the sway bar end link actually comes in contact at different times with the axle and is causing an issue. And then also it's coming in contact on this side again, actually with this track bar relocation bracket. So these are all some of the issues that we're going to be addressing with this particular Jeep. All right, we've got the lift completed on this Jeep, and some great improvements that we just visually can see even before taking it for a test drive. But one of the things we notice is these springs are actually nice and straight. They're not sagging and warping every which way. I can actually get my finger in between the spring and the sway bar now with no problem, which before they were actually hitting. And the sway bar links last time were so long that they would actually hit the frame up above, but I can show you on the other side where they actually trimmed that a little bit. But the other thing we really noticed when we took this lift apart, this is a Jeep JKU, and when we took the front springs off, we're not really sure why, but the springs on the front of this Jeep were actually lift springs for a JLU, and so I'm not sure why this had JL springs in the front and JK springs in the back, but the free length and several other factors of the springs were substantially different than the JK, and was contributing to some of the drivability issues, things like that. So we've got those issues corrected now. And then if I come over here to the other side, and you can see on this side too, if you look all the way up in here, right here, they had actually previously trimmed, it's kind of hard to see, get my arm out of the way, but right here, they had actually trimmed this because the sway bar end links were too long and were hitting up there. But now, looking at the springs, the axle is actually centered really well now, and has eliminated a lot of those problems. And so the front end has had most of the correction work done to it that needed to be done. I'll show you some stuff here in the back in just a second. All right, so back here in the back, we've got a lot of the issues that we had previously fixed. So if you want to notice here, one of the things that we had a problem with in the past was the sway bar end link here was actually hitting the axle. And also there was a drop down bracket here on the track bar, and that was hitting. So we fixed those issues, so we're no longer having that hitting issue. The other thing that we did on this particular Jeep, we actually added in these little spacers from Rough Country that are 10-degree spacer, which really helps the angle of the springs here, and it makes a big difference. We found they come with the 3.5-inch lift kits. They don't come with the 2.5-inch lift kit, but we found adding them onto the 2.5 lift kit actually makes quite a bit of difference as well. They're fairly inexpensive just to add in. So it's just some other things that we've done to address it. The other thing that we like to do is the Rough Countries don't come with the shock boots, and we usually want to add this in for our customers at no additional charge when we do the lift kit for them.